Hey guys, what's going on? I'm Vince.
What's up? I'm Greg.
I'm Mark.
And we're doing a vlog. So right now this is our test video. This is probably our third test video. So we're going to hope that this time it'll go a little better. So we're going to do a lot of entertainment topics, such as video games,
TV shows,
and upcoming movies.
So let's get started. So right now, our number one video game we're going to talk about today is Mortal Kombat. Now what you're thinking, not Mortal Kombat 11, even though I do recommend you play that game. Right now we're going to talk about the OG Mortal Kombat 1. So right now we're going to pass it over to my friend Mark, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the history of Mortal Kombat. So pay attention.
Well, it's interesting to note that this series that is now over, what, 20...
Over 20 years old now. It came out when did it come out?
At least like close to like 25 years.
25-year guys, believe that.
Yep. It's that it began as such a basic concept, a tournament fighter, but with this particular franchise, it began as it took lots of inspiration from different films, namely Bloodsport, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme,
Yep.
Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, and Game of Death, also starring Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Right.
And the main characters in the game were based on them. Were Johnny Cage was based on Jean-Claude's character from Bloodsport, and Bruce Lee's character was inspiration for Liu Kang.
Right.
And several other, interesting little inspirations they had for the other characters as well. But what was key was the creation of the first three games with live action actors being shot on a green screen with like the way that they were able to do the effects and everything.
For such an old, you're talking about because
right.
it was
so early on.
Yeah,
I mean, they did Pit Fighter, and and that one was a basic concept as well. But Mortal Kombat took off, and when it came out in arcades, it caused a lot of controversy because of the blood, violence, fatalities, and everything.
It was a lot more bloody than Street Fighter.
Exactly.
Dude, what was the original game based off of? You were telling me about it not so long ago.
Oh, what, for the
Mortal Kombat? Yeah.
Basically, Mortal Kombat was sort of like, all right, so the thing about Mortal Kombat that I noticed is this is not official. Like, this is something I've noticed over the years, but basically, I've noticed that if you ever watch an old school Bruce Lee movie, Enter the Dragon, as Mark mentioned before, the thing about Enter the Dragon is that it was a landmark for martial arts movies, and basically they all had a theme. And you notice not only Mortal Kombat, but Street Fighter and Tekken and a whole bunch of other fighting genre games and movies, they all basically went for one common fact. They all take place on an island. The fighting tournament started on an island. And so that's why I'm saying basically Enter the Dragon is basically the precursor to Mortal Kombat. There's some little similarities too, like a Shaolin guy enters a tournament to take on the bad guy, rich white guy who's there with money troubles for the tournament. And basically the big hulking, bulky guy, Bolo, is actually, I feel like, a homage for, or should I say, he's sort of like the precursor to Goro, the four-armed big guy in Mortal Kombat. Oh, and real quick fun fact too, if anyone here is an old school, Chinese action-packed movie person, especially if you know about Kurt Russell and that movie Big Trouble in Little Chinatown, the guy Lo Pan is how they got the idea for Shang Tsung, the old man fighter person.
I think that's crazy.
The element for Raiden,
right?
The character who used lightning, and is similar. The hat that he wore, and the fact that he could shoot lightning from his hands.
Right.
They were. It seemed like there were several films that inspired the creators of Mortal Kombat.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, I also think it's cool. Another little bit of information, you guys know, the original Mortal Kombat was actually supposed to be a Jean-Claude Van Damme standalone fighting game, which I think is kind of cool. So essentially, the comic relief character Johnny Cage was technically one of the original characters, not the first characters created for that Mortal Kombat series. Which is why, if you guys really pay attention and know that, at least in the first three Mortal Kombat games, he has the same fighting style, almost like of Jean-Claude Van Damme, with a kickboxer. He does the splits and all stuff like that. So I think that's pretty cool to do that.
For sure.
We're talking about too, as far as the TV series, the new Lord of the Rings thing.
Oh, right.
A movie that's coming out.
So, from what I understand, the Lord of the Rings thing is actually a little bit of a spin-off. Mark is a much better expert with Lord of the Rings lore and the stories in the books. But from what I hear, as old as these novels are and as old as these, the current movies are, it's still a success. Plus, I think that they might be doing this as like a little bit of a competition with Game of Thrones, because if you notice, when Game of Thrones is starting to come to an end, fantasy movies are starting to jack back up again. So, Mark, what do you think about it?
Well, I definitely think it's interesting. I mean, it's unfortunate that a film series as successful as Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and the way that Warner Brothers was able to get such a franchise out of these books, that the Tolkien estate and Warner Brothers couldn't make an agreement about doing further stories. And this one, interestingly, seems like a bit of a loophole because they can't do the Silmarillion. They can't do other books, but they could expand on the lore that's contained in the Lord of the Rings books and the Hobbit. Whereas if they go back to the Second Age in the story, they'll be able to touch on a time period that hasn't really been seen, not necessarily seen, like it hasn't been touched on as in depth in film or a live action TV series.
Right.
And I think that by doing that, they can create the scenery. They can cast actors to play the characters who were around during that time, because it's like the stories like that we saw made into 3 movies for Lord of the Rings and 3 movies for The Hobbit. Even though, it did kind of feel like they kind of forced 3 movies out of The Hobbit. It was with 1 book, whereas Lord of the Rings was a trilogy of books. Mm-hmm. They could still make a great series where there is all this, history.
Right.
And everything that they could expand on with different characters and different time periods, because there's so much in it.
And then having that said, Vin's really, really good with like the filming industry. So for your take, be it movies or TV shows, especially a TV show, how long do you think they stretch out the seasons for?
I mean, what's actually great about doing TV shows more than movies, like movies, you think about it, guys, like it's an hour and a half minimum to 3 hours long, okay? In that time frame, depending if they have a long series or not, it's kind of hard to cram everything in. Where TV shows, they have more opportunities and more ways to expand it and actually focus on different characters. So what I think is going to be awesome about this show, especially it's supposed to be on Amazon from what I heard, that they can really take characters that you might have heard of or never heard of and actually flesh them out, give them more, more prominent in the story. Like what happened to the dwarves? What happened to the different kind of elves? How did humans act before? It's really cool to see that. And from an actor's point of view, I feel like it's awesome to be that way because there's more opportunity to get more people in and to act, because there's not a set style of character, so you can technically go in as yourself, and then they can make you a certain character, or you can fit in there. So I think it's really awesome to expand on something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have one more topic we're going to talk about, and I believe we're going to finish the topic with the new Joker movie coming out.
The Joker, right, the Joaquin Phoenix one.
Yep.
So not to get confused, guys, so there's actually a Joker movie, but if you guys know, there's actually, I believe, 5 Jokers that people have taken the roles of Jokers throughout the years.
Well, there's been several between original with Cesar Romero.
Cesar Romero, he's the original, isn't he?
He's the original from the Adam West Batman series from the 1960s.
And then after that was Jack Nicholson, correct?
Jack Nicholson,
Then
1989.
Heath Ledger.
Yep.
And then
there are. If you count Mark Hamill's version as the voice in the animated series,
right, Batman the
yes, as far as live action, it would go next to Heath Ledger and
Jared Leto.
Jared Leto in Suicide Squad, and also if you count Jerome and Jeremiah from
Right.
Even though Warner Brothers put a
nick on that, right? Like
they couldn't call him, and he couldn't dye his hair green, much to Cameron Monaghan's dismay.
Right.
It's more that he's whatever contract he had, it just specified that, and now it seems like with the success of Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and Shazam, that they're trying to do more standalone features before they go back to bringing everyone back to the centerfold, because the way that Marvel and Disney were able to do the Avengers.
They built their lore. That's what they were, and that's what happened with DC, because that's what it turns into. We talked about before. It's all about the money, because the way, not saying DC's not bad. I love DC. I'm a Marvel and DC fan, as sure both of my colleagues are. But the thing is, DC was playing catch up with Marvel so much that they just crammed everything together, where literally Marvel had years to build up TV shows, web shows, stuff like that. So I think what's interesting about the Joker movie is that you're looking at the standpoint from the villain, and he's supposed to be one of the worst villains like Batman, has ever had, and you're gonna feel bad for him.
And the interesting take behind it too that I've noticed is honestly, like, did a little research on it. If you just watch the trailer, you can see that it's a period movie, takes place late 70s, early 80s. You know the scene where he's flipping the sign around and stuff before the kids take it away from him? Pause at that scene and look at the signs around. You can actually see that it says typewriter repair in the back and stuff. That lets you know how old it is. Plus, it's a Martin Scorsese film. We know it's going to be a great rated R gangster-ish movie. Martin Scorsese, most people know who Martin Scorsese is, but if you don't know who that is, Martin Scorsese is like the Steven Spielberg of mafia movies, basically. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And a lot of heavy influences with Robert De Niro, which is why I think they put him in there as an actor, a supporting actor, because there's a lot of homages to Taxi Driver and The Comedian.
Well, if you think about the way that the Joker is as a character, that always there has to be a method for each actor to take on that role.
For sure.
And Cesar Romero didn't even shave his mustache when he played the Joker. You could always see it through the makeup. But, that one was supposed to be like a comic book. So that's why his character was
very animated.
Exactly.
Very
goofy.
animated. Very goofy.
Well, being an actor myself, it's really interesting because sometimes they really don't give you. They literally here, take a character and give your own spin. So Jack Nicholson went kind of like the comic book, but he's also threw his own crazy flair.
Right.
And then Heath Ledger went to almost like what if the Joker was a real life crazy person?
Right. Because they say, there is a theory that Heath Ledger's Joker was actually a soldier
with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right,
I heard
who had gotten the scars from if he was on a tour in Afghanistan or Iraq, and as if because when he mentioned or a truck full of soldiers is going to get blown up.
Yeah.
No one panics.
Right.
And the part with the parade where he
dressed up like
the
military guy.
In the military, and they say his expertise with explosives and firearms. But it's all theories. But it's if they were to put say okay, likely what would have been his background, that probably would have been it.
One of the nods or basically things to that theory is they say that at the very beginning at the bank heist, one of the guys says, "Why do they call him the Joker?" And they go and say he puts makeup on his face, like war paint. That quote, that was in the movie. They say war paint. So anybody can say that in the movies, but you watch the other movies, no one makes that same reference with Joker. So you notice a lot of military-esque type things with the Joker and stuff.
Well, it's also interesting to know because Jared Leto also put a lot of effort into creating his Joker. I know that compared to the other films, Suicide Squad wasn't as well received. What was unfortunate, his character, they cut a lot of him out, and that was he should have been the villain. I didn't even know who the villains were in Suicide Squad before I watched it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
and the problem was they built up Harley Quinn and Deadshot to be the two central characters. Where
I think that's because they were actually Will Smith.
And Margot Robbie.
Yeah, they were the top build. That's why they were pushing them so much.
If you think about how Heath won an Oscar for the Joker, but Jared Leto won an Oscar for Dallas Buyers Club before he played the Joker. That's why they picked him.
What do you think personally though of his look? He went with the shortcut, the tattoos and everything. He went, to me, it was almost like a gangster kind of Yakuza kind of look.
That's what they seem to go with his version.
Which is not wrong with that because a lot of people, they talk bad about it, but you gotta understand that somebody, especially an actor like Jared Leto, they're gonna go off their own feeling. Like a method actor, they're not gonna go off of, well, I can do kind of like a Heath Ledger, I can kind of do like a Mark Hamill. They kind of want to do their own thing, so you don't get compared to. Unfortunately, that's just what happens.
I usually blame the writers more than the actors in these situations because he had some moments. I would say there are two moments where he was intimidating and kind of awesome. One was when he was talking to the guy at the club who was eyeballing Harley Quinn while she was, dancing on the dance floor. That's one scene. Then the other scene when Joker was sitting right in front of the guy, and he's almost practically sitting on his lap, and then he's grabbing his head and he's smiling at him real close and everything. And to me, that's he was able to go from being angry and serious to being goofy and laughing within that snap moment. So in a way, I felt like Jared Leto's was being underplayed. Right. I felt he was being underplayed, honestly.
and that was the unfortunate part of that film because it was an ensemble film.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal cast. The problem was I don't think they gave each character enough time
Right.
to stand out, especially the Joker. But going on Joaquin's Joker, because we don't know yet if this is supposed to be the guy who becomes the Joker, who Batman faces, or if it's supposed to be the guy who inspired the Joker. Because right now we see him as Arthur Fleck is a regular average Joe Schmo.
Right.
He's kind of stepped over. Like you could tell he dresses up like a clown at first to do nice things. Like, he's spinning the sign. His mother, she told him to be a good person, and he really wanted to do that. But then he starts seeing the world's a cruel place, and he continues to get stepped on, and he takes it to the next level as he uses at first it's, the makeup he wears almost like a clown, and then he starts wearing a clown mask.
Right.
And then, you see those parts where he's really going to the, he's really getting into it.
Well, that's what I was going in as far as this Joker movie. I think is really unique is the fact that at all the times you always want to hate Joker. You're like, wow, he's such a jerk or whatever, or such a bad person. In this movie, you kind of feel bad for him. Literally, when you watch, you're like, wow, I feel really bad for this guy.
Kind of. I think what they wanted to do this time, in comparison to Heath and Jared's Jokers, they kind of wanted to go back to the 1980s Joker when it was The Killing Joke.
Oh my goodness!
I didn't read the comic book, that cartoon movie that came out, the one that Mark Hamill said he'd come back to do the voice. He was a sympathetic character because he was an average, everyday working man. Wife dies in pregnancy. It made him crazy, and then Batman accidentally knocking him into the tank of acid, which turned him into the Joker physically. That's what pushed him over the edge. So that's what makes this movie interesting, is that there's no Batman in here. But the thing is that it's not Batman who turned Joaquin Phoenix into Joker. It's the city that turned turned Joaquin Phoenix into the Joker.
Well, that's what's interesting too about the Gotham TV series is they always say the villains were always making it like the city was always bringing them back.
Yeah, right.
No matter how many times they left or whatever happened, they were always drawn back to the city, and there was always a driving force there'd be several chaotic events, and then there'd be order with the balance. There'd be the villains like the Riddler and Penguin and Jerome and Jeremiah, not the Joker. And then you'd have the GCPD with Jim Gordon and Harvey Bullock, and you'd have Bruce Wayne and Alfred, who were, with Lucius Fox, who, the early stages and everything with how they were developing the things to help battle the evil. And it always seemed like the way that they would present Gotham as similar to Metropolis and other comic book based cities it was a combination of several real life cities, and that they wanted it to have some root in real life and then be, encompassing of, how these all characters, are from there.
Right.
They want to take over.
That's what you're saying. The different, some people think it's different between Marvel and DC. That Marvel is more like real life, like New York City, Chicago, stuff like that, and DC's more, fantasy. But all right, guys, we're actually gonna wrap it up, okay? So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously we can keep going and going, so that means hopefully we'll make more videos. So guys, leave comments up below and let us know what topics you want to talk about. We'll look at them, and then hopefully your topic will be in our thing. So again, I'm Vince.
I'm Greg.
I'm Mark.
And this is our vlog, guys. Have a good night. Thank you.
Peace.
Wow.